Hi, welcome to Walking the Path. I'm going to be talking to people who are on a spiritual journey, who want to share with us their experiences about what they've found on the journey. So if you're interested in spirituality and how you can embed it into your life, come and walk the path with me. Welcome to Walking the Path, and today my guest is one of my cricketing heroes. I grew up in Birmingham, so therefore my cricket team is the Warwickshire Bears. In the 90s, I was living in Yorkshire, and as you can imagine, they're a bit cricket mad up in Yorkshire. But in the 90s, Warwickshire were winning everything, and due in no small part to my guest today, Paul Smith. And he has had quite a checkered life, I think you'd say. I was reading his autobiography. It's called Wasted, with a question mark at the end.
I'm pleased you said the question mark, Vic.
Absolutely, because I got that straight away. Some people might look at your life and think you could have gone on to be England's greatest all-rounder and things like that, but you didn't, and that was a waste. I think you might agree with that.
I think really you like a lot of things. You go where a door is open, yeah. Sometimes you knock a door, but I wouldn't have been a very good door-to-door salesman personally. I think I think you either get it or you don't. You either want it or you don't. So for me, cricket was about playing with a bunch of guys that I wanted to play with. Warwickshire were my team from way young, despite the fact I lived 220 miles away from the ground. The people that played there and its history sort of inspired me from a distance. So when I first came to Warwickshire as a 14-year-old kid and spent a summer holiday, my school summer holidays down there, being around Willis, Amos, Calacharan, David Brown, people like that, seeing how crowds, how big the crowds could be on a Sunday, etc., etc. I wanted to be part of that. My main thing, two things throughout my career. One is I wanted the club to be in better fettle than when I arrived, when I finished, which I think undoubtedly they were.
Absolutely.
But the main thing from me is statistics kind of mean something.
Yeah.
But statistics, it's not how many hours you put in at the office, it's what you do when you're there.
Yeah.
And when you do it. So for me, it was about handling pressure. If I knew I was handling pressure well when it really mattered, I knew I was ahead of the pack, because, not many do.
Yeah. And I think you retired early through injury, didn't you?
I retired because at 32, I'd actually won everything that I set out to do. I'd achieved what I set out to do. I was also in the middle of a divorce. There were parts of the world I wanted to go and spend time in. And if I continued to play cricket, it was actually going to get in the way of it. So I had several conversations with different people about what I thought I was going to do. Most of them probably would have thought I was mad, because I was doing exactly what they would have killed to have done. But to be honest with you, it's a bit like, the time is right. When a relationship is over, when your best work is done, when the best time is to hand over the baton. I knew it was right for me. So a lot of people now probably get it a bit better than they did when I retired. But I knew myself.
Yes, it's when it's time to draw the curtain and depart, don't you? And one of the things that I wanted to catch up with you on, and we'll come to what you're doing now later on.
Yeah.
But you spent some time over in America, didn't you?
A lot of time, yeah.
So you brought sort of cricket to a particular client group that we don't normally associate with cricket over here, didn't you?
I was asked. When I stopped playing, I spent about 3.5 years living in Houston, in Texas, more time there than the UK. If I was seeing my kids in the UK, I would split my time between here and the US. And after about 3.5 years, I got a phone call from a lady called Katie Haber, who's a movie director, Sam Peckinpah's long-term partner. And she is an English girl, and she lives in West Hollywood. And she said, I've got this cricket team in LA, and they're trying to teach kids in gangs and homeless people, trying to put some structure into their lives, and cricket will play a part. So I said, cool. And she said, I would like you to have some involvement in it, which would obviously mean I'd have to relocate to Los Angeles from Houston, which is a long way. And which is what happened over a period of time, where I spent more time in LA than I did in the UK. But yeah, that was a concept where we worked with kids in gangs. We dealt with judges. We dealt with lawyers. we dealt with police officers, we dealt with anyone other than anything to do with cricket, because that was the only way we could actually engage with these kids, because they're forever in trouble. And when you're in trouble in the States, you know, they lock you up, and they lock you up for a long time. Here, I think that don't think kids get locked up for anywhere near as long, but there they just lock them up and throw away the keys. So it was a matter of trying to change lives, and thankfully it was very successful.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. I think cricket does change people's lives. Certainly changed yours, and in some senses it changed mine as well.
I think what it does, it gives structure where probably it's missing. It teaches people to listen. It teaches people to be attentive. It teaches people to work in pairs. Teaches people to work as a team, teaches people discipline, teaches you to take it on the chin, even when you do everything right and you still don't get the result. Sometimes that's a bit of a hard one to swallow.
Yeah.
And if you're talking about kids in gangs, they don't take a loss in anything. So to get them to learn to walk away when they didn't think that they were leg before wicket, and they had to walk away and come and sit down and sort of not do something that they might have done on the street not that long back. You're winning every time. So the more time we spent with them, well, if you look at what they're doing now, you know, one guy employs 60 people, you know, officially. Wow. They're married, they've all got careers. So, you know, a very different picture to the one that, although to be fair, in the first week I was there, I met them on a Thursday night, and by the following Tuesday, there was already 3 dead, and we had to find $4,600 per child to bury them. And sort of, so when people like Bob Woolmer said, "What are you doing over there?" I never questioned what I was doing, but I was, sometimes in life, you know, you're going to gain more in an education than you will do in your bank balance. So it was pretty priceless, really.
I think a lot of the things that are worth doing don't pay well.
I know a lot of things that are worth doing don't pay at all.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. As you know, Paul, this podcast is nominally about spirituality, and I'm just exploring the concept with people. And I've talked to spiritual healers, I've talked to rock stars, I've talked to all sorts of people about it. And one thing that is common is that spirituality is defined differently by everybody. Could I just ask what you would define spirituality as being? I think sometimes in life you find yourself in places or around certain people where there's a connection that isn't spoken, and you feel something. And several times in my life I've been places where quite clearly, maybe 1,000 years ago, people were sleeping in these caves as families, you know, hunter-gatherers sort of situation. I think obviously lockdown has made it virtually impossible, but if I can write a book that sells 1 million copies, I'm buying the coffee shop on Holy Island, Lundisfarne, because that's an incredibly spiritual place. Yeah. Jeanette, the mother of my 13-year-old daughter, she's incredibly spiritual. As soon as I met her, I felt as I've known her all my life, and I almost felt as if I went to school with you, I would have hung out with you a lot. And there weren't many girls who I would have hung out with when I was that age, because all I did was play cricket. So I think you meet certain people in life, and it's almost like it's an unspoken, you know, there's some connection. Yeah. So things like, you know, spirituality and soul, it's what I would look for in a person. You know, anything else is a byproduct. Yeah, I think that there is a theme in these podcasts, and that is that your vibe attracts your tribe. Everybody I've spoken to has roughly the same ideas about spirituality, and they all happen to coincide with mine. But they all define things very differently. Sure. So you're the. I've got another one to interview tomorrow, and I wonder if that will come out as well. It might. Well, I think because I'm Northumbrian. Although to be fair, my great grandfather in the late 1890s, I think, left Marseille and relocated to Stoke-on-Trent, and was the first French onion man in Stoke-on-Trent. So I'm innate French, and some would say I was part Viking. But yeah, you certainly looked it when you were batting anyway. You certainly looked like a Viking when you were batting on bowling, rolling into people with your hair flowing everywhere. I've been called worse. So just tell me something, Paul, about how spirituality has shown up in your life, and give me an example of what you were talking about.
I'll give you an example of in America, a guy I was really close with, Ed. He was a Vietnam veteran. He did three terms in Vietnam, and he used to have to crawl through bush, through forest, through whatever you want to call it. And he's looking for tripwires, and he's looking for booby traps, and he's probably got about 30, 40 men behind him. And if any of them went out of sync and went into a tripwire, and any amount of booby traps could have been set off, he had to make a decision whether he could get them back to camp so that the medics could work on them, or quite literally whether he'd have to put them out of their misery. And I spent a lot of time with Ed, and it completely did his head, the fact that he'd seen and had to do certain things. And obviously when they went back to the States, they weren't even welcome in their own country. And about once a month, once every 6 weeks, Vietnam veterans used to meet near Santa Monica, and we used to take them to a bar. And there'd be people in wheelchairs, people missing limbs, people this, people that, and you could look at them, and they didn't even have to open their mouth. You could read their face about what they'd seen and done in life. But their spirit was absolutely amazing, despite the fact that in certain cases you felt that you were just looking at a shell, and you could tell that by looking in their eyes. But they retained spirit, and they retained spirit through a bond, and they knew that every 6 weeks or so they would gather. And almost like, people meet for all sorts of reasons. Sometimes the guys used to sit and just drink beer and talk shop. Other times it was quite clear that they were there for something, for other reasons. To me, it didn't really matter. It was just important that they met. And sometimes it would be a matter of we'd have to hire a van or something to pick them up so that they could get there. But that was like a spirit. Maybe that's not a good example, but there's definitely spirit there. And they definitely hung on in there. And, I'm talking early 2000s, and obviously as they get older, there'll be few of them about, but they'll keep each other going. There was a spirit there. Spirits in townships in South Africa, fake spirits in gangs in LA, people, false loyalty, people believing nonsense, really. Sort of like bad spirits, no guidance. So I think that the right spirits will guide you. It's a bit like writing, you can't rush it, it will come. It's a bit like tears. Tears will come when they want to come. And you can't make yourself cry. And if you do crocodile tears, then anyone with half a brain will see they're not genuine. So it's a matter of being real, really, because few things I've seen in life that weren't real actually work. A lottery win would be something that works, that sort of had no spirit.
Yeah. I'd like a lottery win as well.
So would I. The 120 million one, if I can.
Well, yeah, that'd be nice. I think I'd quite like. I ought to do the lottery first, then I might stand a chance. But
you've got to do it. Got to be in it to win it.
Money, we can do what we can, but money does have it pulls strings and things like that. Which,
it has advantages, undoubtedly.
Yeah, what I do at the Amethyst Centre takes money, but thankfully, I don't rely on it. I'm in a very fortunate position where I'm not reliant on the income that the centre provides. And that is not why I'm doing anything at the centre. I'm doing it because I was allowed to live in 2012. I nearly died.
Wow.
And as a reward, if you like, or as payback for being allowed to survive that little episode, I'm running the Amethyst Centre. So I'm being a beacon of light, if you like, for the people of Coventry. That was the other phrase that I was given.
Sure. I think certain things happen in life, and they're not things you necessarily want to have happened. You're ill prepared for it. You think, why me? All those sorts of things. But I think if you can find a way of getting through, some people have to get through all alone. Imagine that. Some people have got family around them. Some people have got a partner. Some people have got kids. Could be anything. I think sometimes if you get through some of those things and you're unscathed, you remember it, but it sort of points you in a direction where you think that you can do something as a sign of appreciation.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to, I really do think it's important to do something if you can. Few do, to be fair. So anyone who does, take my hat off every time.
Paul, you mentioned the the townships in South Africa, just in passing, and can I just take you back there, please? What were you doing there? I presume you weren't playing cricket.
When I was, after my first full year at Warwickshire, David Brown and Bob Willis asked me what I planned to do that winter. Okay. And at that stage, I was still speaking to clubs in Australia about trying to spend 6 months there. And they said, if we can get you on a scholarship to South Africa, would you go? Which would have meant that Warwickshire was sending me on a scholarship, which would be a much better thing to be involved in.
Yeah. Oh, I get you. Yeah.
So when I got there, it would be September '82, I think. So apartheid was still in existence. I lived in Johannesburg. Dr. Ali Bakr, the most important man in South African sport, possibly the most important man in South Africa, because his job was to get South Africa back into international sport. But in order to do that, then obviously society had to change its ways. So if Bakr put enough pressure on the South African government, then hopefully overseas countries would get rid of sanctions and that the economy would become more buoyant with the dismantling of apartheid. So it was much more of a gig for a 17-year-old kid to be in townships than just teaching them cricket, although obviously that was part of it. But Bakr's words to me always were, put smiles on their faces, make them smile, give them some fun, and hopefully we'll get more next week. And every week we'd always get more. But as something to view for the first time, bear in mind I'm obviously white. There's 2 million people who aren't white. They live in tin shacks. It's not police. It's pretty damn vicious at times, and I'd say at times means a lot of the time. And it polices itself. So to be white and be the only white kid in amongst 2 million people who weren't white, you have to earn their trust fairly quickly. So, Soweto and the townships that surround it were a great education. And I saw some pretty horrific things. Policing methods where what we see now coming out of America, and scenes where police officers appear to be doing the wrong thing. Well, in South Africa, something like 53 people per day now get murdered in South Africa. That's every day in South Africa.
Yeah.
I think that and that would never involve figures that came out of townships, because people used to get murdered all the time. So that was an eye opener. And obviously, in the further down the road in the Cape, Bob Woolmer asked me if I would go and do some work with him in the Cape, and we worked in Kailicha and different townships. That was after Mandela had been released. Yeah. And I was the first white guy ever to play for Basil D'Oliveira's home club. That's a spiritual home, if you like, for want of a better phrase.
Absolutely.
So to play in that team and to be the first ever professional and the first ever white player to play for them, that was a big gig. And because as a community, once they knew I was there for real, I wasn't just going to turn up on a Saturday, play and leave. I spent an awful lot of time within the community, drank beer with grandpa's parents. It was a lot more than bat and ball. So the townships theme, and it's great work. You've got to be there for the right reason. Yeah. But I said at the time, it'll take 100 years for South Africa to sort itself out, and it really will, much the same as it will take 100 years for Zimbabwe to as well. Yeah. That's a sad reflection of society, not humans within the society, because they can't do anything about it. Yeah. They just have to live through it.
So something that when I was thinking this morning in the car about what I was going to ask you about, say to you, there's an Irish word which I've had used to describe me, and I would use it to describe you too, and that word is blessed.
Right.
And it's, they use it in the sense that doesn't matter which way you fall, you always come up on top, or somebody's looking after you, protecting you while you do things. I think George Best used it as the title of his autobiography, right? Because he was the same sort of thing. He just seemed to be untouchable until the cancer got him, I suppose. Do you think somebody was looking after you while you were working in the ghettos and with the gangs and things like that?
Well, what I do know is that in both environments, I always had to have someone who had a Luger with them, or whatever, particularly in America. And there was always a guy with me. The biggest problem is if you go into those places when you get off the freeway in a place like Compton, when you come off the freeway, there's a big sign which has probably been a Coca-Cola billboard in the past. And every day you'll see it. If it says, if you're not from here, don't come here. You know, and it's there and it's in red, and that's a gang color. So, you know, the first sort of few months that I would be in a place like that, they're checking me out. They actually think they think I'm a cop.
Yeah.
And I'm like laughing, saying, you know, I spent half my life avoiding cops. Don't think I'm one of them.
Yeah.
You know, and once they know that you're for real, you know, I would see you. For me, it's more about winning the trust of grandparents and parents, because once they know that you're for real, their word carries more than the kids on the streets. The kids on the streets will get it because the people you engage with tell them that you're there for real. So someone has always got your back, you know. And I think that if you feel that someone's always got your back, then you shouldn't fear going anywhere. And I say that as a guy who we were just talking about Johannesburg before. Ashley Harvey Walker, who played cricket for Derby, who was my immediate boss in Johannesburg.
Yeah,
we used to go into Hillbrow on certain nights because the shops in Hillbrow sold the best vinyl and they had the best bars. And we used to get told, don't go into Hillbrow at night, it'll end in tears. And several times we saw guns, and Ashley, as I say, who was my immediate boss and my captain, he had his head blown off in one of the bars that we used to go to. And Francois Baderman, who was a teammate, I went out with his sister, Erica, and Francois got assassinated for a Toyota Corolla outside a golf club. So I think we're all blessed. You know, sadly, I've seen a lot of deaths, sometimes right in front of my eyes, you know, and other people who died through ill health or whatever it would be. I think we are blessed, and we don't count our blessings enough. Personally, I know that's hard to take sometimes because some people really haven't seen that much in life, but they don't feel that they've either achieved much or whatever. But half the battle of life is getting through. Yeah. It really is, you know, and we've just experienced that for the last 12 months.
Absolutely. Yes, we've just had our first anniversary here that my husband was taken to hospital, having lost his sight to COVID.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And with a raging UTI as well. Terrible. He was in a terrible state, but luckily he was in there for 8 hours. Wow. Came out with loads of antibiotics, but took him 8 weeks to regain his sight. Yeah. And that was a year ago. And every day I get up and I thank God that we're still here.
Fantastic. Because, that's important.
You know, I look at my husband and think it could all have been so different. And it just after a year it doesn't get any better, but you get a bit of distance to it.
Sure. No, I think you're right. It's no one writes our script, either personal or, you know, from a parish point of view, or, you know, from a country that you were born or whatever it would be. That's why, and I think that if you are in a position where you can do something, no matter how small, whatever your thing is, do it, because if enough people do it, you'll see forward movement. I think the biggest problem is quite often people rely on governments, and if it's not in their agenda, you'll never see forward movement unless 1 million people take to the streets and cause havoc. So it's important to do whatever you can. Do what you can. Pick up the telephone if you can. Go and knock someone's door and say, "Are you all right, mate? Are you sure?" Do whatever you can.
Yeah.
Say thank you, because people do appreciate it.
Yeah. Can I just ask you what you're up to these days?
Bring
you up to date.
Well, if you asked me in May 2021, what am I up to these days? I've spent the last 14 months virtually inactive, other than writing, podcasting. Couldn't leave the parish. When I could leave the parish, couldn't go where I wanted to. Most of my belongings in another country that otherwise was around the other side of the world. So what am I up to at the moment? I've done a lot of writing. I've got opportunity to publish another book, which I'll do hopefully within the next 6 months, depending on how busy I become once the doors open in the middle of this month. But, you know, well, it's a bit like being in a band. I had a sort of a gig list of different places I was going to go speak or do this or whatever. And someone pulled the tour. So thanks, Boris. Yeah. Thanks, whatever it was. So, you know, it's a matter of seeing, you know, what opens up, what arenas open up. I mean, it seems baffling to me that if I said, come on, Chris, let's go for a bite to eat and a quick glass of wine. Yeah. We might be able to find a place where we could do that. But if I said, come on, Chris, let's go to Edgerton Cricket Ground, a sports arena with 25,000 seats and no roof. They say, no, you can't take Chris there, Paul, because, and they tell you can't go. It just seems pretty crazy. Yeah. You know, and if we got something like COVID-19 and it's so bad and it's this and it's that, why don't we close down our borders immediately? Why didn't we do that immediately if it was something so bad? Yeah,
that I can't understand.
There's so many inconsistencies, and I don't want to. I hate to be a critic and I hate to be cynical, but you know, there are a lot of people who've made decisions. If it was in most walks of life, they'd have got the bullets within by the end of the week. Yeah, because it affects so many people. Because it affects so many people, and I know it's difficult when the whole population of the country is breathing down your neck for answers. But sometimes it's best to turn around and say, you know what? I get advice from people who aren't quite sure themselves. So let me come back to you when I've got more confidence in what they're telling me. Sometimes you just got to be honest. Yeah.
Well, let's hope we can fit Coventry into your gig list.
Well, that'd be nice.
Next year or so, that would be great. If you're ever in the area with some time on your hands, give us a ring. I'll meet you at the centre, the Amethyst Centre.
I'd need a sat nav for sure, because I don't think I've ever been to Coventry and not got lost. I swear on my kid's life, I've never gone to Coventry and not got lost.
I've only lived here 21 years, and I only just managed to work my way out.
Say that again?
I've lived here for 21 years. I only just managed to work my way around the ring road.
Yes, for sure.
So I know what you mean.
Yeah,
I'll give you directions, and you can have a look at the centre and see what you think of the place, and see what else we can do together.
So that's a community centre, yeah?
No, it's a complementary therapy centre.
Okay.
Yeah, we do all sorts of treatments. We do spiritual work and training, all that sort of thing. It's got a good vibe to it. You'd enjoy it.
Cool. Yeah. No, it'd be cool. It sounds good. I mean, it's just, we've just had a crazy year, haven't we, in the sense that we haven't been able to go anywhere. You can't even make plans. You know, the plans that you try and make over a period of time, you realise it's a bit of an irrational decision to make any plans because you don't know what's coming. Yeah,
and here am I trying to plan out the expansion of a centre I've only just been able to get back into, and I have some mad plans in my head, Paul. And I hope they're going to take off, but you know, we're putting flesh on those bones. Anyway, we have to wind up now, Paul. Well, cool. Thank you so much for talking to me.
No problem.
I'd really like to speak to you in the flesh sometime soon. So hopefully we can continue this conversation in the flesh.
Cool.
You take care of yourself, Paul.
And
Thank you for
look after yourself.
To me. We've come to the end of the path for today. If you'd like to support the podcast by sponsoring it, please get in touch. Or you can visit our website, www.amethystcentre.com, or our Patreon or Facebook page for Walking the Path. See you next time.